Hello there. Today, this is what we're going to talk about. I will show you how to model a phone case for your own phone in Rhino. This is supposed to be a beginner's tutorial, so even if you have no experience in Rhino, I try to go through every single step that I make. And I also want to show you different ways to stylize the backside of the phone case and how to use different modeling techniques in Rhino to start your product design journey with this super amazing software. If you want to make your own 3D printed phone case, stick around and let's go. Thank you. All right, let's go. So before we can actually model our own phone case, we need the height, the width, and the length or depth. And if you have those, then we can start more or less. So this is the Rhino interface. I will try to explain everything as I go through it instead of like giving you a theoretical lesson of all the things without ever using any of it in the get-go. So now we have these 4 viewports, and what we want to start with is by double clicking on the top one, we basically isolate this view and make this our main viewport. We can still switch between all the viewports at the bottom. But yeah, we go for the top now. Now we select the rectangle. Here I'm in standard, by the way, standard menu, and just went to rectangle. And now I do, where's the first corner of the rectangle? I just type 0 and press enter. And now my first point is at the origin of the space, right? So now I know that my phone is like 73.82 millimeters. I press that one, and that's the width it assumed. And now I put the height. It would be 161.56. And here we go. That's the base rectangle that represents my phone. And what we want to do next is go, and maybe you have a screenshot or you downloaded the standard views of your phone as a reference. That would be really helpful. So I just go in here and drop the back view as a picture. So once you drag and drop it in, this window appears. I just leave it on picture, press OK. And now it also wants you to say where the first corner of that picture is. And at this stage, it doesn't really matter because we don't have, let's say, a perfect frame around our phone, but there's some white background with it. So it doesn't help us if we just put it on 0. We have to rescale it anyways. So I just click somewhere and drag to scale it initially. Now what I can do is I try to more or less align it with the view, and then you can use these squares at the end of your image to scale them basically. And you can also use this field to move it within the plane that you're operating in at the moment. And if you don't see this whole thing, then you go down here at the bottom and you see the gumball, and that will activate this tool for you. Make sure to press the shift key while you do it to scale it evenly in all directions instead of just stretching the image, right? And what we also would like to do potentially is to bring down the transparency a little bit. So I just click this, and then I go to on the right materials, and here I already have some materials from the example that I'm using. But basically you pick the one that you have right now, and then you can, on the transparency, you can just up the slider to something reasonable, maybe 70 something. And now you can also see your lines better. And you can just zoom in and see if you're good to go. I think potentially a little bit less. What you can also do is, like, if you shift click on one of the squares, you can then type a scale factor. So we want it just a little bit smaller. So I put 0.99. And now let's see. So now we're a little bit too small. So let me do 0.11. Maybe it's a little bit too big still. 0.995. Okay, so that's good, right? So now I have this one. And then I go to layers here. And I can create a new layer, or you can use one of the existing ones. So now these are the ones where I tested what I'm going to show you. So don't be confused about these other layers. But we do reference, images, real, and then you can click your image, and here at the bottom where you see default, you can now select the layer that you want to place it in, which is the reference image real. Then you can make it visible or invisible by clicking the light bulb button, and you can lock it. So now you can't select it anymore, so you won't interfere with the actual things that you want to do with the modeling procedure of it. Okay, so that's one view. Now we would go to the right and do the same thing as before. Press 0. It's still 161.56 long, and it's 7.99 millimeters high. Now I drag and drop again the side view, and we see that it's in a different orientation. Yeah, so this arc lets you rotate the image, right? So if you hold shift after you clicked it, it will snap in 90-degree increments. So that makes it easy for us. So you click it, you press shift, and then you can move it 90 degrees at once. And here we do the same thing as before. We try to align it to our reference that we set. What you can also use is the scale command, right? So if you can just type in scale, and now we click where we want to start to scale from. I just use the reference one, and now we go to the max width that we have, which is somewhere here. And if you can basically pull and move everything until it matches your desired output. And it didn't move at the back. That's because I had the base point for my scale operation at the back, right? Converging my back and bottom. So now that's all good. I maybe move it up a little bit. And the camera is not part of the square, so that's also fine for me. Again, I go into the materials, go to side view, or maybe that's a different one, side view here. The yellow one, you can also pull it down further to see which actually materials are within your scene. And again, we just increase the opacity so we can still see our lines well, but we still can recognize all the details of the phone. And then we can also put this one into our reference image real layer, and now it's just there for reference. Right. So now if we go into perspective view, you see we have our reference images on the top plane and on the right plane, and we have our reference squares, which are still working. They're not locked or invisible or anything. All right, so now we can start to model. I would start with the top view again, and now we already have our reference here. We can just use it. The first thing I would do is see if we can get the fillets, the rounding of the corner. So we can either go to the left and click fillet curves, or we can just type fillet, and then we can select the two curves. If you want to change the radius or the other options, you can just go to the top at the command view And here it will basically tell you everything you need to know. The radius 2 is certainly too small. I would just try 10 for now. You can also measure with your own phone, right? Join no, trim yes. So usually for fillet, I don't change that much except the value. So you click one of the curves and the second one, and then it automatically applies the radius, right? So now I feel like it's a little bit too big, so I Control Z to go back. Then I do right click or spacebar to redo the same command, the last command that I used, which was fillet, right? And now I can do some adjustments. Maybe I do 8 instead. And we see we're much closer with the whole thing. And now I press the right mouse button again, and it keeps the last value that you use for this operation. So now I can just go ahead and click my curves, do it again and again. And one more time. And there we go. We have our fillets. And what you saw here is that it's asking between two curves. This is the curve that we have on the top plane and the one that we have on our right plane. So it just gives you the option to pick either of them. But what we have here now is basically our filleted object R, and we notice that it didn't connect them because I probably selected the wrong one here, but that's not a problem. We can just select our curve and then we type trim, or no, we select also these curves, fillets that we made, and now we type trim, or we click on the trim command here. And now we just click the ones that we want to get rid of, which would be this one and this one. And now we confirm. And now we still have the issue that they are separate curves, but we want them to be one curve. Let's see. I deleted one because it was the double one. So now we just select all the curves and go to join, which is the puzzle icon here, or we just type it. So I would try to get into typing the commands as fast as you can, because it's just much quicker working that way. You know the command, you don't have to look in all the different menus to find it. You just go ahead, type it and confirm, and that's it. All right, so now we have our base curve. And now there are basically two different approaches that we can go ahead with if we want to make our phone case. I show you first the way to do it with the sweep command, and then I show it to do it with the extrusion and Boolean operations, right? So if you want to do a sweep, then we need a section of our phone case. So we just have to sketch it. So at first, sometimes that happens because I have O-snap on, right? And it snaps to certain points of my curves here. For example, I hold it here. It also indicates where it wants to snap onto. And center is basically the center of a circle, of a rectangle, of a shape. So if you don't want to use that, you can just uncheck it and then it won't snap to the center anymore. Or if you want to avoid it altogether, you can do the disable and it won't snap anywhere at all. You can also just unselect the O-snap at the bottom here. But now we should be good. I want to more or less catch the corner over here and see if I have the right angle. Then I go up. And maybe I just go to the mid because I know it's a symmetrical phone. And now I use the mirror command, mirror. I click at the end of the curve that I just sketched. And now I have to more or less show the mirror axis or the mirror plane for the curve to be mirrored about. So I just hold shift and put it to the left or to the right, it doesn't really matter, to make it a 90-degree mirror. And now I have these two curves, which are perfectly the same. I join them and now I have one curve, which is more or less the contour of my phone, right? Now, what we want to do, because we want to give it volume to and not just like create a surface from it, we do offset. And now we can determine the distance of our offset. We could say loose, what kind of corners, and so forth. So all the options, just try to play around with them and see what they do. For the moment, I just want the distance of 2, I think is fair, like a 2mm wide phone case seems reasonable to me. And by clicking on either side of your curve, it will do the offset in that respective direction. So I go to the outside, and now it just added like randomly 2 curves that we didn't really want, right? So that doesn't have to be a problem. We can just Control Shift click to select just part of a curve, even if it's like, this is one curve, right? It's one curve with multiple segments. And if we want to select just one of the segments, we do Control Shift click, and it only selects the segment that we don't want. I do the same with the bottom one. Now there's no connection, right? So what we can do, either we just select the bottom one and we expand it, also while holding shift. Do the same to the top and do the same to this guy over here. And now we can trim again, and where they split each other, that's basically where we want the cut also to be. So I just remove all the overhanging edges, confirm, join, and now we have a curve that more or less resembles what we want. Okay, why can't I join it? Let's look on the other side. Okay, so that's what happened. They are not sketched on the same plane because I snapped it to this corner and also to that corner of my other curves, which is why it more or less stretched the things that we have here, which is not a big issue for us. So what we can do about it is we can click on our blue square and just type 0, and then it will bring all the points together. What we can also do is set points, so set pt command, and then we say set x, and then it will also pull them all on their x value together, and now we can even control where we want the curve to be. So let's see, let's put it in the middle here. And all right, this is also the same issue here, right? With that original curve that we even started with. That's potentially also why it even gave us the weird offset of the curve. I was already confused about it. But we do the same thing here. And then you can also, if you select both of these curves, let's join everything to make sure that there are 2 curves only. And do the 0, then it will also bring them together. Now let me check once again. If we do the offset now, maybe we do an offset of 3. And now it does also give us a normal offset, right? Okay, so maybe we can delete this one, we delete this one, and we just repeat and do the offset 2 here. Then we also don't have to cut our curve at the right point at the bottom and the top, so that's all good. So now all that's left is to sketch how it's supposed to wrap our phone. Like, do you want to just make a straight line to the other one? Do you want to go horizontal and down? Like, so that's up to you, right? Up to your taste. Yeah, and this is what smart track is. So if you don't click, if you just hover over certain points, it marks them in this gray thing, and then it will create smart relations between the points and your cursor, so you can more easily find the correct connections. If you don't want to use it, you can just unselect it, or if you want to get rid of either of these smart tracks, you can hover again over them. So we go ahead, confirm. So now we have these 3 curves, 4. Let's see if they're all aligned. Still not. So we just do the same thing again. We type join, and now we join 4 curves into one closed curve. Now we have one closed curve, right? So now let's make sure that it's in the center. So we use the align command, type align, and now we use vertical center. And this command helps us to position our curves according to a reference that we have. And we use this reference of our base curve to place it into the center. And now we basically have everything we need to use the sweep command. We have a section curve and we have a sweep rail. So there are 2 different types of sweeps, the sweep 1 and sweep 2. For the sweep 1 you just need a single rail and one section, and for the sweep 2 you can use 2 different rails. I can show you. So sweep 1, let's go ahead, we select the first rail and the sweep shape, and then we just press enter. And then you get still some options, all good. And now we have basically the outer edge of our phone case, right? Let's move this one aside so I can show you the sweep 2. Let's say we have 2 lines here and go to the right, we align it, the top with this point over here, right? And to just make it a little bit more exciting, we select parts of the curve and move it up. So now if we do the sweep 2, that's what I type, sweep 2, I select the first rail, I select the second rail, and now the section profile. Now it will create a completely different shape. It will basically grow to the back because the second sweep rail was showing us. So that's already like a pretty cool way to make quick dramatic changes just by changing the base curve that we use for our sweep. Right, so I move this one aside and maybe also up a little bit. And what you see here is the ISO curves. And if you find them annoying, you can just go to the properties of the object, this color wheel, and then there's a checkbox, show surface ISO curves, ISO lines. What does it say exactly? ISO curve, yeah. If you uncheck it, and then it will also get rid of these. But they're really helpful because they indicate the properties of the surfaces, right? How is the surface oriented? Where's the U direction? Where's the V direction? And what's the overall quality? Do I have 5 surfaces that are tangential to each other, or is that actually just one single surface? For example, here, this is just one surface that wraps around instead of being like cut along the fillet and radius. And here, if you go back, we have the same thing. It's even one surface that wraps the entire thing at once. And here, because of the different direction of the curve, it cuts the one in several pieces, right? So that's one option, and then yeah, you still might want to close this one. So let's do that quickly. I type in dup border, dup edge, and now I can just, this basically means duplicate edge. I can select those edges that I want to translate into curves. So I go ahead and now I click this one. I confirm, and now I have basically just that one curve from the border of my geometry. and then I press on the blue circle sphere, which is the extrusion sphere. And if I click it, I can type in a dimension. 2 millimeters is our thickness. So I type in 2, and now it extruded the curve. So if I move this one aside for a second, it extruded this curve 2 millimeters upwards into a surface, right? And now we can turn that surface by just typing cap, and cap basically closes every hole as long as the section of the hole is a planar field, right? So it can't close curved holes in your geometry, but everything that is planar, it will just close and make things solid. So now we have this, and now more or less we have a full phone case, and we can, these are two separate geometries still, so we can combine them by using the Boolean union command, and now it's one geometry. And what we can also do, because now we have, let's say, this as a surface and this one, even though they are coplanar, we can type merge, and then it already proposes merge all coplanar faces. And if we do that, it basically gets rid of all the split lines of the faces that are planar or coplanar. And now we have a proper geometry to keep going on and go further with. Right, so that was the first method. Let's look at the second one, which is basically working with extrusions. So I know my phone is 7.99 millimeters high. So I took the curve, I pressed the extrusion sphere, I extruded it, I used the cap command, and now basically I have the base volume of my phone. I know the edges of my phone are chamfered. We do the surface and we say chain edges, so it selects all the curves at once instead of me having to select all of them one by one. I confirm, and let's see if we go to the right. I think that's about all right. So we can do the same thing for the bottom curve. Click chain edges again, confirm, and now I have the base volume of my phone once more, which is cool because if you want to render now, you can already also include your phone with it, and you don't have just the empty shell without anything else. And how do we get the phone case from it? We use the offset surface command, offset surface, and now we click all the surfaces that we want to offset. So I select our body, confirm, then I say the distance, 2 millimeters we said, right? I type in 2, I confirm, and now more or less you have to pay attention to where the arrows are pointing. They are pointing outwards. This is the direction that we want, but if that isn't the case, you can just go ahead and flip the direction so it offsets the surfaces inwards. But we want to go out, we confirm. So now I have two different volumes, the phone and basically a bigger version of the phone, which is the phone case. And what we can still do now, we can with Control Shift select only the top surface, and then I press the Alt key and press on the blue arrow, and then I type 5, and now it made a copy of only the top surface 5 millimeter away from the top surface. Or maybe we do it differently. I wanted to do basically a Boolean operation. Now I put it back 5 millimeters and 7.99 more. And now I can basically just subtract using Boolean difference command. So I take the main volume and I confirm. Now I select the poly surface to subtract with, which is the extrusion that I just made, which is laying in there. And now I basically removed everything, right? But it was a extrusion, so it was straight. There weren't like all these inner details of my body are lost. So this is not the right approach. Instead, what we can do is we can try the shell and see if that helps. We know it's 2 millimeters thick, and we select the face that we want to shell from. And now it created a volume which has 2 millimeter thickness everywhere, right? So this is much closer to our geometry. It looks also very similar to the one that we have here, even though this is a smaller edge. I'm wondering if we should do something about this edge here. We should get rid of it. Maybe, because now if you print it from TPU at one point, potentially you can still get your phone inside. But apart from that, the 3D print will probably not be flexible enough to facilitate squeezing your phone into this big overhang. So maybe let's remove it. I shift, control, and click select surfaces that I don't want anymore, which are top surface and the inner chamfer surfaces. And the last corner. And I press delete. Now they're gone. And what I do next is a loft between this edge, the inner edge, and the outer edge. So now we need curves again to do the loft command properly. So we do duplicate border this time. The difference between duplicate edge and duplicate border is that the border is the naked edge. So the closed volume doesn't really have a border. But an open volume with holes and gaps in there has naked edges, and these are the borders. So if you duplicate border and click on the poly surface, then it will automatically generate only the naked edge as a border. And now I have this as a curve. We repeat the command, do it for the outer shell as well. Now I have a curve here and a curve here. And now I can use the loft command with the curves. So we take both of these curves, we do the loft command, we keep all these options as is, and now we have still 3 separate surfaces. So we want to join them, and now this is one closed poly surface, right? And now you should be much more easily able and capable of getting your phone in here. This is still a very sharp edge, so maybe you want to give it a fillet, maybe 1 millimeter radius. Let's see, try chain edges, let's see if that works. Right. So this looks reasonable to me now. There's just a little overhang, so we can just pop it in. I think even with solid PLA prints, that should be fine. And now we move on to the next stage. So let's take this one and move it aside, which would be to add the details. You can also get rid of these curves. So with details, I mean the buttons and stuff like that, right? So we have to make sure that we can access these buttons. So if you click on the drop down of the rectangle, there's also the rounded rectangle. And then you just have to more or less guess. It's never like 100% precise because the picture is not perfectly orthogonal. It's probably still somewhat perspective in there. So the dimensions will also be affected. But just roughly we try, and then we print and we see if it works or not. And then we do further refinements. And this curve is exactly the same as the other one. So I just Alt drag on one of the arrows to make a copy of the original curve. And now I have my 3 curves. And what we can also do, let's see if I move this back for once, and then we still have our phone, right? And now we can take these and use the align command again to make sure that it's like perfectly centered in the horizontal center of our phone. So we moved it up a little bit, right? But because our geometry is based on the model of the phone that we made, it makes sense to deviate from the picture just a tiny bit to accommodate for the differences between the picture and our model. So now we have aligned it, we move it back up. And what we want to do next, we can move them in. And how I do it usually, I select the curves, I pick the extrusion sphere, I pull it out so it actually crosses the volume, and then I select my surfaces. So this is also interesting in Rhino. So if you click and drag your marquee from the left to the right side, it won't select it. But if you click from the right to the left, it will select everything that touches your marquee box. And if you want them to select from the left, you have to fully enclose them with your box in order for the selection to be accepted, right? So that's just like a funny little trick, I think, that sometimes helps. You can more easily select and touch with your box, and sometimes it's more easy to fully encompass your geometry. So anyway, they're still open, so I use the cap command to close them, and because it's all planar surfaces, it just closes them easily. Now we have 3 volumes, and we use the Boolean difference again. So I type Boolean, it proposes difference already. I select the 3 surfaces to subtract with, I confirm, and now we have these 3 cutouts here. Let's move this one aside. I don't have a picture from the bottom, but we can still make assumptions of how it's supposed to look like. Going to select the rounded rectangle again, because I have the charging USB-C port and a microphone audio cable port. So what I want to do is roughly from here potentially till here. So I'll just cut like an entire section out of my thing at the bottom, right? So that it also doesn't cover the speaker outputs and all these other functions that I don't have a picture from yet. So let's see how that looks like. Maybe I have to do some further adjustments, but let's see. Yeah, it's certainly now it's going too far. It's going into the radius, so that's definitely not the case. So I shrink it down a little bit. And maybe we just want the maximum of our rounded rectangle to hit the upper edge. We can also use the align command. So now let's align it. Align vertical center. We take the midpoint of our phone case. We do the same, we cap, we do Boolean difference. We select the subtraction, and there we go. So this is how I do it. You can do it completely different depending on your phone and also on your preference. And what still is missing is the cutout for our camera. So we go from the top. We use the rounded rectangle command, and we try to roughly estimate based on the phone where we are. This. Now You have to make sure to pay attention. Look at your phone also in real life. Where is the camera actually? Is it on the left or is it on the right? Because I noticed that the buttons are on the left side because it's the back side of my phone, right? So it's flipped, but my phone case, we're looking at it from the top side, so we have to move it to the other side. So I will use the mirror and use the mid as the reference, and now we have it on the exact right position. And now we do what we did before. We move it up a little bit, we extrude it down, we select the extrusion, we cap the extrusion, we select our phone case, we do Boolean, it already proposes Boolean difference, we select what we want to subtract, and there we go. Now we have all the details in the phone case. My phone only has buttons on the right side, there's nothing on the left side happening. So maybe you want to save this state of your phone case before doing any further edits, which is like a workflow that I recommend. Because in SolidWorks, you have a feature tree where you can just roll back and go into the past to make changes that will also affect the future, which is not the case for the basic Rhino work environment, right? It's possible in some ways, but usually the way you do it is you just copy your curves that are relevant. You save them on a separate layer if you want to. You save all the intermediate steps of your development of the geometry, and then you can always revert back to those. Take some reference surfaces if you need to make adjustments, modify, and go on with that. But all right, so now we have everything. We don't need our reference images anymore, so we can also hide them. So I go into the layers, press the light bulb for the layer where they were stored on. And if you're wondering where your object is stored in, just select it, and then the bottom one says where it is. This one is in default, so this is the default layer with the check mark is the one where you're active. If you want to just model in a different layer, double click the layer, and if I now make an object, you already see it has a different color. It has the green color, which means that it's in layer 4. So that's just on a side note. We go back to the default layer. All right. Now, maybe you want to refine things a little bit further. Let me select those, or maybe I will get rid of them. I would say maybe do chamfer edge again, 1 millimeter chain edge, and I want to just give these some nice chamfer, right? So also it becomes more nice to touch. Maybe you reach it better because 2 millimeter thickness is still quite thick, right? And the buttons might not be protruding as much from outside of the phone. So I think this is not only an aesthetic choice, but also functional. And we repeat the same command by pressing the right mouse button or the space bar, confirming. And now we have like a weird issue here happening, right? So let me show you how I would handle this in real life. I would remove this face. I would remove this face. Then I would go to polylines. I would sketch a line from here to here, confirm, press right click to do the same thing again for the bottom, confirm, and now I would select the surface, type in the split command, select my curves, and now I have split the surface into different surfaces. I can remove them, and now I will loft this edge to this one, and this one to this one. And if you feel like, all right, this is pink and the others are gray, this is because they are flipped. So you can just go in there, type flip, and it will turn the surface around. So now you see the upside of it instead of the downside, but inside it will be pink because that's where the downside is of the surfaces. So we can still look into the body. So now there's different options to close this. If I join them, I can probably use the cap command because it's supposed to be planar and it closes it automatically. You can also go ahead and look for the surface tools in the surface toolbar here. And there's like a surface from edge curves. You can select then the edge curves and it will create a nice closure for it. You can join. And now you still have your body properly sealed. It's a closed poly surface, which is what you see at the bottom here. You can also see all the properties on the right side, the name, the layer, and all the other things. And if you're completely confused about what you're looking at, you can also type in what and confirm with the selection, and it will tell you what you have. You have a poly surface with the specific ID, all like very detailed information, how many vertices and polygons it has, tolerances, everything, right? So this can sometimes be really handy if you want to have any of these informations available. Okay, so now that's all good. So there you are. This is your phone case potentially. You can just go ahead, file, export selected, and select export like STL file or step file if you want to. But obviously you're potentially a designer or on your way there. We can still go much further. So let's move this one up and out of the way, and this one down. So this is our phone case. And if you look on the other side, it's still completely plain, right? It has this chamfer, which is cool, but apart from that, there's no real interesting detail yet. So I want to show you some tricks or some things that we can still do to upgrade the aesthetic, the appearance of this whole thing. So this is the original one. Maybe I do it like this, so I know exactly how far apart they are. So maybe, I don't know, you want some cutouts in your geometry. Right? So if you type fillet, we can now apply some radius. So I just right click again and again, right, to repeat the command. I don't change the radius. And now all of the curves have a radius. Do as we already know. Boolean difference, I select the stuff. And then maybe you want to chamfer the edge. I think 1 millimeter is fine. Chain edges. And now we have, let's say, more of a technical look. You can even say you want to, if you have a logo or something, you can deboss and emboss it. You don't have to cut all the way through, right? You have to type text object. So then we get the curves. You can also make it already surfaces. So maybe let's do that. Text object, use surfaces instead of curves. Say okay. And now we have surfaces. Why is it now? Let's keep the cool font at least, right? And you can even do solids. So this is much faster than anything else you could do. So now I take these, I do group to make sure that I always have them together. I go to the top view and place them where I want to place them. I can still scale them, right? So I will try to match it with my phone case. I think that's cool. We could also try to place it in this gap, then I would make it smaller. Right, so there's different options. I think for now this will look cool. And then we look from the front because we want to only deboss, right? So we use the align again, say bottom of our geometry to align with the top of the phone case. So now they're flat on top of each other. And now I just do -1 and it goes 1 millimeter deep. And now I do Boolean difference again with the group. And now I have the logo debossed. So that's one option. Another option, I think, which is quite nice and simple. Let's say we take this guy. We click anywhere. We say 2 by 2. And now we have a square 2 millimeters by 2 millimeters. I click, say 45 degrees. And now I use the array command, right, to multiply. How many do I want? Let's say 15 copies in X, 1 copy in Y, 1 copy in Z. And now I click on the first base point as my reference in terms of dimensioning. And I want them to connect at one point. So this is what we get. So now I have exactly 15 copies of the square. What I can do next is I can move it where I want to. And now I will just extrude them really long. From the right, I select them and cap. Now I have solids. And now I will try to make some cool arrangement from the top view to get this modern stripy appearance. Maybe one like this. And another one like that. But for a wider field. And now what we see is that we want to have them as close as possible to each other, right? So we use the move command, and then we can basically select a point to move an object from, and then we can select another point to move it towards. So I select the bottom corner of my first object and the bottom right corner of my second, and now they should be perfectly aligned. And let's have a look. Looks exactly like we want to. Right, so let's go back to the top. We want those ones to be touching this edge and not cross. So we use the move command again. We select one of the corners and move everything like so. And I think this is basically what I want. Yeah. So now we do Boolean this, difference again. So let's align it. Sometimes you get a little bit lost with all the geometries. So you can try different perspective view. Align the bottom with the top of our phone case. And now I go in 1 millimeter. And then we will have some really nice geometry. And now I will do Boolean difference again. Select those. Right, and because I only went in 1 millimeters, but the side of my square was longer than that, and I still get these surfaces, which I think is a nice added effect. If you don't want that, then you have to push those guys in deeper, but you only have 2 millimeters wall thickness if you followed along. So then you have to decrease the size of your squares for them not to protrude through your phone case and create holes. I think this is an interesting appearance. We remove the ISO lines. What's cool about this pattern is that depending on the angle you look at it, some surfaces will be dark because they're in the shadow and some will be light. So even though it's made from a single material, you get like the appearance of different shades of the same color, which is really cool. I think especially for a phone case, I think this is an interesting effect. All right, so what we're going to do is we go to the top view again. We create a curve from here. And then we use the array again. Select we want 15 in 1 in X direction, 15 in Y direction, and 1 in Z direction. And now we say it's supposed to space that much. I mean, that's up to you. And now I Alt and copy, and I find the middle, like roughly. Doesn't have to be precise at this stage. So now I can go into the perspective, and I can nudge them just a little bit further below. 1 millimeter is enough. Then I will get rid of the last one. So it goes from the top, bottom, top, bottom, top, bottom, top, bottom, top. Let's see, let's move them up. And now I want to loft these curves. So I just have them all selected and type in the loft command. And you already see that it automatically understands what I'm trying to do. So I will create these curves. And now you can still say if you want them to loosely follow the reference curves, like really tight, or should they even connect in straight lines? I just use the normal for one, say yes, click the surface, we flip it. And I think this is really nice. But what we want to do is we want to apply it just to this part of the surface. So I copy that surface again by Shift, Control, clicking it, and then Alt, clicking the arrow to copy it. We use this one as a volume. And then split with this. And now we have cut it. Okay, now we can get rid of these curves so they don't interfere. And now we have a curve that perfectly fits in here, right? But because of the waves, there is no way for us to easily connect it to our edge actually. But we can use that to our advantage. So you can either do a Boolean again and remove some of the material. So the edge is in fact curved. So that's a possibility, right? You can stretch that surface and cut away material from this one, but that's not what I want to show you this time. What I will show you instead is the following. First of all, okay, let's do it like this. I take a copy and move it to the side. And I move this one also to the side. So now I want to create these curves where I can split the surface. So let's move this one aside for a second. So now I have this curve and I have this curve. And now I will split this surface. So I type split. I select these curves. And now I will get rid of the middle part because I will substitute it with this one. Right? So that can be nice. And what we still want to do potentially is to flatten the edges so it gradually fades to the side. So the way we do it is going to type in cage edit while we have selected our object. Then we click on bounding box, world, and then we have to set the cage parameters. So how many control points do we want to manipulate the shape of our surface? I just recommend as little as possible, but for this example, 4, 4, 4 should be sufficient. We confirm once more, and now we have a cage edit. And now we can select different control points and basically move them to shape our surface in any way we want. But we can also use it to basically flatten the edges. Let's see if that works the way I plan to. And now we do 0. Now you see that the edges are perfectly straight, but we still have the shape in the center. So now if you look from the front, we still notice that there's some geometry above and below. And that's fine, right? So now we escape out of the cage edit. And now we just will align and move our surface to match the other one. All right, all right, all right. Okay, so now we still have the issue that this edge is not perfectly aligned and straight. But we can still fix that. So we still have our curves here. I will just resize them a little bit and move them inwards. And I will do the same thing for this curve. And I will cut away some part of our generated surface, which is this guy over here. So I will do split again, split, selecting these. And now I will get rid of this part and of this part. And now I will do blend surface. Now we'll select this edge with this edge. All right, let's just go ahead like this, repeat. Now we should be able to join them. And now we should also be able to remove this one, move it back 100, and just have this to be the substitute. And now we have one closed poly surface where we have this cool effect which fades to the edges. Let me remove the ice curves. Right. And then here it goes flat again. So I think this is also a really cool technique that you might want to use. It's already advanced. And I just want to show you that you don't always have to use Grasshopper in order to achieve those things. There's like a lot you can do manually and still have a lot of control. That's probably it for now. But Rhino is not like something that you learn super fast and easy. You just have to continue using it and learn the commands, and then we'll get faster and faster. Oh yeah, and then maybe you want to look at them and get like a first glance at how they might appear. Then you can go to perspective dropdown and select the rendered view. Now they're all in white, so there's not much to see, but you can select them, go into this color tube, which is material, and apply like a material. You can use new material, and there's like some pre selected options or default options. This will be plastic, so why not make it plastic? If you have a certain color, you can always pick it, right? I don't know, maybe you have some sort of teal filament at home. You select it, and you can still adjust the reflectivity. Is it like more matte or highly shiny? Transparency, clarity, if it's glass and transparent, is it frosted or not. So now this is basically the phone case. Or now you can already, if you have it created once, you can just apply it to all the different options that you have, right? And we get this cool debossed logo effect. I think that's quite nice. Maybe this one in black. So here's what I mentioned, right? So here you get to see the shades, which makes it appear much darker. And here you get to see like the highlights. So I think this is a pretty interesting version. And here, the one we just did at the end, where we have this wave pattern just partially across the surface. So if you print it, I would recommend it to print on one of the sides of the phone, so you get all the details and not too many layer lines. But yeah, that was it. Now you can go ahead and create your own phone case for yourself, all by yourself, modeling in a Rhino. I hope you enjoyed it. Peace out.